Welcome. This is part 3 of a 7-part Zoom series. And this particular presentation is One Earth Living. That's a fascinating topic that is more important with every passing day. You see my website there on this first slide, and the image is my backyard here in Eugene, Oregon. This is originating from Eugene, Oregon. So some of my ideals for this series, some of my ideals just anyway, I just really feel like probably everybody here, we really need to be picking up the pace for transforming our society, our economy, our worldview. We really need to be picking up the pace. Some people, of course, ask, do we have time to turn the corner in terms of a sustainable society? It may be a long shot. I don't think it's a given at all, but we sure have to try. And the more people engaged in creating the kind of world we want to see that fits within the boundaries of the natural world and brings out the best and positive human potential, restores the natural world, the more of that we have going on, the better. And another place that I really appreciate in terms of kind of inspiration and affirmation as well, the principles of the wisdom of the world's great spiritual traditions. And those are care for the natural world, modesty of lifestyle, service to the community, personal and society uplift, and responsibility for our own actions. Practically every great spiritual tradition has something to say about these kinds of values. I'm not talking about the religion. This is the social code, the ideal for human behavior. The contents for this evening's presentation, I made a really nice flow chart today. We'll see that in just a moment, but the flow chart will be one of the first things we'll see. And we want to address the topic, why are we here? And of course, we'll look at ecological footprints. We'll take a look at what is a One Earth lifestyle. And we'll take a look at what a One Earth lifestyle might look like at home, and creating a wider, more upscaled lifestyle, One Earth lifestyle in the neighborhood and in the community. I want to say a few things I think is fascinating when we talk about a sustainable future. What would an economy look like that was a sustainable economy? Well, a lot of people speculate on that, and I'll do a little bit of my own speculation shortly. And I also want to expand the context a little bit, and by way of expanding, I'll say a few things about the upcoming presentations, because they do expand the context for this presentation right here. So here is the flow chart. So what this is, it sort of starts here and it ends up over here, and it kind of goes up and down like that because it's too long to go horizontally across. But the starting point is we have some issues we need to deal with as individuals, as a society, as a global entity. The economic, environmental, social, political trends are not looking so great. We've got lots of issues, and those are just some of the big issues. There's lots of other issues as well, but they're probably all related. So we would be good to have a little bit of an idea about our eco footprint. Downsizing is a term I like to use. Voluntary simplicity is another word. Simplifying our lives, prioritizing our time and money, enlarging the scale of our actions, and then even enlarging the scale even more. So as we go through the presentation, you'll see the red is going to gradually kind of shift over here. And that's going to indicate to some degree what the content is going to be as we see the flow chart multiple times over the course of the presentation. It's kind of like a moving table of contents is what it is. So first, environmental, social, economic trends and conditions. We'll hear more about the economic system in 2 weeks, so I'm not going to dwell too long on capitalism as we know it, but I just have to, this is what motivates me a lot, is the economic system we have. And when I flashed on this thought some number of years ago, this image here shows different sectors of the economy. Any sector, any economy has lots of sectors. There's government, manufacturing, healthcare, professional and technical services, lots of different types of sectors. But when I came to realize a number of years ago, I was thinking about this, and when it flashed on me that we have tens of millions of jobs in this country that to a large degree exist to repair the damage caused by tens of millions of other jobs, I just said, I can't believe that. And it's completely true. We have, just think of healthcare, think of manufacturing, think of the automobiles that have create wrecks and damage. That takes a lot of public health to clean up the mess. Just kind of think about this particular idea sometime if you haven't, but you'll shake your head and say, if you haven't thought of this already, it's pretty powerful information right there. So to me, that's a real motivator right there. So another aspect of our economic system, of course, we know all of this: air pollution, nature, clear cuts, Gulf of Mexico oil blowout. Some problems with the economic system aren't quite as dramatic as this, but of course we have climate change. Capitalism, as we know it, is the source of practically every problem we have. And some people might say that, well, it's just broken, we need to fix it. Well, my own personal opinion is it's not broken, this is just what it does. That's why we need to create a different kind of economic system. And then this picture here, the American way of life is non-negotiable. We know human activity, egged on by advertising, by the needs of a growth-based economy. We know there's climate change. We know there's hundreds of millions of tons of plastic in the bottom of the ocean. We know that the Amazon is burning. We know all these things are happening, and yet they still continue to happen because there's too much money to be made to do something different. The whole ideal of our economic system is to sell as much stuff as possible. And that's creating a lot of problems. So this quote, of course, a number of celebrated politicians can claim this quote, but I think that this is another motivation to me. We definitely need to be negotiating, because if humans think that their activities are equally as important as the well-being of the natural world, that's a lot of need of repair of that kind of thinking. So that's enough for the economics right now. This picture here, okay, ecological footprints. I'm sure we all are familiar with ecological footprints. What kind of an impact does our own activity have on the natural world. And this map right here shows that this gets really quick right into the one Earth idea down here. This dark, kind of a very dark red, the United States. A little bit over here, I think this is the United Arab Emirates. But for everybody on planet Earth to live like the average citizen in these places, it would take 4, 5, 6 or more planet Earths to supply the resources and clean up the mess. And even the affluent countries of Western Europe and Japan, Australia, even their ecological footprints are a fair amount less than the United States. I think Germany is something like 3.2 Earths, and the United States is like 5. That's a pretty big difference. And the people over here have a pretty high quality of life as well. The United States is just kind of almost in a league of its own. This is not the way much of the earth lives. So this is another important, simple, but pretty profound graphic right here. This big circle here represents the average American lifestyle. This is 5 Earths along here. So this is just kind of represents the resources, the needs of the average American lifestyle. And if we were to live more closely within the boundaries of the natural world, this would have to be a size something like this. And that's not an attractive or not even a choice that this economic system is willing to even think about. Of course, it's non-negotiable because this is a growth-based economy. Essentially, it's a Ponzi scheme. So when I made this graphic, it really makes it a lot more understandable to see the different sizes here. This is substantially less. And then this makes even more interesting. What I've done with this graphic is, this is a graphic you've probably all seen, and it is what 20% of the population owns how much of the wealth in the country. So the top 20% owns something like 80% of the wealth of the country. So this is the top 20% owns all this, and then the upper middle and the middle lower, and then the lowest 20 percentiles, just little slivers there. So then we have the one Earth circle again, and just to make it simple, I divided it into 5 equal pieces, just so we could say, okay, if everything was really equal, then each one of these 20% would have an equal slice of the pie. Do I expect this to happen? Of course not, but this is just a mind exercise here. But it makes me wonder, would the wealthy who currently have this much stuff, would they put up with downsizing to that? I don't think so. And even the less wealthy have enormous eco footprints too. So this graphic is purely just to illustrate, just, I can't say it any other way, just how far out of whack we are with our lifestyles here. So what are the implications if we were to live within our ecological boundaries? What would be some of the implications? Considering that our wealth is basically created by turning nature into money, if we lived within our ecological boundaries, we would not be turning so much nature into money. A sustainable society would not have nearly as much financial capacity as what we have now. And that goes down to the individual level too. One thing I didn't mention about economics is the term external cost. Of course, you know what that means. When we buy something, we're not really paying the full price of what the impact is on planet and on public health for using a product like junk food or automobiles. So an honest economy would internalize the cost, and an honest economy that internalized the cost, everything would cost a lot more, a whole lot more. So the implications to me are that a future economy, people are not going to have as much money if we even make it that far, and everything's going to cost a whole lot more. And that's either going to happen in a somewhat sociable way, or it'll happen in a way that's not so much by voluntary effort. And the prospects don't look so great right now. But this also tells me that many types of employment and jobs that we have now are not going to exist in a sustainable economy because people won't have enough money to pay for them. And what would that economy look like? It would be a repair economy, the environment, urban and rural places, social and human relations. There will be jobs, absolutely, and a lot of jobs we have now can adapt to the future, of course, absolutely. A lot of jobs will, but a lot of them won't. And how that shakes out remains to be seen. But I think the virus, the COVID-19 virus, is giving a little bit of an idea of what types of products and services are not going to make the cut. It's not an equivalent situation, but the hospitality industry, especially that depends on people coming from a distance, is not going to fare well in a sustainable society. So the big challenges for us is to unlearn the mythologies we grew up with, the economic, social, political mythologies that we grew up with, and instead learn skills that are helpful for ideally a huge leap in human evolution. I'm sure everybody here is working on that themselves, and put these skills into action, not just to talk about them, but to put them into action. So that's just a little bit of my own thoughts on where we're headed. And here's our flow chart again. Check your own eco footprint. And the purpose for downsizing, of course, reduce eco footprint, boycott products that don't fit into a sustainable society. And if we avoid the products, if we're smart in how we spend our money, then we've got more money to spend in a smart way, and that can help us as individuals, as neighborhoods, and as a society as well. So this is the page you go to if you go to a place online, and it is the Footprint Calculator, and this is made available by the Global Footprint Network. The calculator asks you all kinds of questions. They're lifestyle questions. For example, how far do you go in a car? What kind of a car? What kind of gas mileage do you have? What sort of a diet? What are your food choices? Of course, we know that vegetarian and vegan is has less impact on the natural environment. Of course, we know that. Lots of benefits. And also, what is your living situation? Not all living situations are created equal. 2 people living in a 5,000 square foot house is probably going to have a bigger footprint than 5 people living in a 2,000 square foot house. And there's lots of other questions too. These are only a few that I chose. But what you do is you answer these questions, and it takes maybe 10 or 12 minutes. And then you say, okay, that's it. And you push something, and then a little number comes out, and that tells you this is how many planet Earths would be needed for everybody on planet Earth to live like you. So maybe everybody here has already done this. I don't know. We can talk about this afterwards if we like. But if you've done it, that is good information to have. And you might suggest to your friends that they take a look at this too, because it's very educational. So thank you. This is what I did some time ago here. So here's our flow chart again. Simplify, reducing the complexity. When we reduce the complexity of our needs and the amount of our needs, we can more, or we're more able to take care of those needs. And these pictures here will illustrate some of that. The goals for downsizing empowers us to choose more purposefully what we do with our own time and money. And when we are smart with how we spend our money, then we also withdraw support from that part of the economy that has unhealthy products and services to sell. I think that's really important. I mentioned that a couple slides ago. And what are the realms that we can downsize? Well, here's a few, of course, and these are referenced in the calculator: housing, transportation, food choices, how we spend our money, leisure. So this is just a quick little look. This is actually, in terms of the footprint calculator, this is kind of my own lifestyle right here. I'm sharing some rather private information here, but I don't mind. And it's not to boast. It's really not that much to boast about anyway. But for me, I drive a car maybe 20 or 40 miles a year. I don't drive very much. Bike is my primary transportation. I'm pretty close to vegan. I share my house with three other people. Minimal shopping, simple recreation. I don't have a jet ski or anything like that. My bike is kind of my recreation. Not very often getting in a jet plane, although certainly in the past I've been in a jet plane plenty often, and I probably will again at some point if I can. I really want to go back to Europe. But time I make for garden, writing, leisure. So there's a little bit more content to this, but this is any middle class person would look at this and say, well, that's a pretty frugal lifestyle, it looks like. And it really kind of is, but it's not any kind of deprivation. This is about a one earth lifestyle right here. According to the footprint calculator, this is about a one earth lifestyle right here. So what can that maybe look like? Of course, there's diet here. A one earth lifestyle, and maybe people here already experience this, but there's enormous benefits. There's enormous benefits for living a one earth lifestyle. Could mean more time with friends, having dinner with friends. It would be certainly a different way of moving around that would be healthier for people and planet. Of course, not everybody can ride a bike, but if we redesigned our urban places, then we'd need bikes, we need cars less, and we could create alternatives to the car as well. Much of the world, people live within walking distance of a lot of their basic needs. So these are just some nice pictures right here to sort of suggest that one earth living could actually, in a lot of ways, be a much higher quality of life than what we're used to now. And I'm not going to go through all of these at all. One thing I might suggest, if you have a screen grab on your computer, if you know what that is, you can copy any of these images you want. All it takes is just a moment to grab an image. And I'll also say that, of course, you know, we're recording this presentation. This is going to wind up on YouTube also. So this information is not going to be lost, not by a long shot. But just say, build suburbia, that's the consumer culture. And the One Earth culture to repair suburbia and quit building new suburbia. A remodeled kitchen, instead of a remodeled kitchen, you could put in an edible landscape and a rainwater system for the price of more or less a remodeled kitchen. Products and profits first, well, public and planet health first in the One Earth culture. And there's just lots of examples here. So this is a little bit of a closer look at the types of jobs that were a One Earth, a sustainable society would not support very many jobs over here, like a car delivered pizza, not a career, a good career choice, fashion and glamour, petroleum, feedlots. You can think up many of your own as well. I just thought these up as I was just sitting here. And of course, the types of jobs we're going to see more of are repairing suburbia, cleanup, the natural environment. I love the idea of an enlarged AmeriCorps. If you know what AmeriCorps is, that is a government program that shows they can do something right. And actually the government does a lot of good stuff, but it's a big place. But AmeriCorps is a totally right-on government program. And of course, Joe Biden says he's going to enlarge that. I say, good, I'd like to see that happen. So just sometime when you're talking with friends, maybe just have the fun conversation of what you think the job and employment outlook is for a sustainable society and see what you come up with. So here we go. We're going to get a little bit more into reality and less a little bit of theoretics here about what a One Earth lifestyle might look like. Well, one of the first things to do for pursuing moving into a One Earth lifestyle, and I bet probably everybody here would say, I know that, I already do that. Well, that's great. I congratulate you. Share what you know with your friends without being too evangelical about it. If you're already doing all this, then this is powerful information that we should be tactful in how we explain our lifestyles, but we shouldn't keep this information to ourselves. But priorities of time and money, of course, what could you do with a $25,000 car or a $5,000 cruise or all kinds of other expenses? What I've done here with my house, I just have an approximate cost of what I spent on some of the improvements I've done on my property. And for example, I took out my driveway and I spent less than $500 taking out my driveway. Of course, I did the work. If you can't run a cement saw and lift big chunks of concrete, you're going to need somebody else to do it. But wow, what a great excuse for a work party. But the money spent over here and spent over here instead for turning the yard into a garden or a garage remodel to make room for another residential space, a heat pump. They might cost more than that now. But the point here is that these kinds of choices that are more kind of in the realm of vanity, if we spent that money in a smart way, we'd make our own lives more resilient. We'd also probably be investing in a healthy type of economy as well, because this is a lot of jobs here. I did most of the work on my property myself, but I know that if I paid somebody to do all this work that I did, this is my property here, I would have employed a lot of people, and I employed a good number of people anyway with some of the things I've done. But priorities for time and money, I think, is once you find out what your eco footprint is and decide I need to do something about this, then a powerful tool is to start prioritizing time and money. And of course, it's not only money, it's time, what we do with our time. is crucial. So here's just a few pictures of my place, rainwater system, and I have a passive solar. I put my priorities into my property and my house. And I'm not wealthy, but I got the time to do this. I've sort of substituted money for time. But the first presentation I did in this series was mostly about my property. And if you have the link to that, links on my website, you can see a lot of pictures of my house. And because that's what I put my priorities into. Other priorities, reclaiming automobile space. This is one of the smartest actions I can think of. Cars take up too much space. Actually, in a month, the presentation is going to be pushing back on cars, and we'll talk more about that. But this is what's left of my driveway right here. I took out my driveway. This was a garage right here. I put those places to better use because my priorities tell me I'd rather be growing food than parking a vehicle, and I'd rather be using this space for somebody to live in than have a car in there. This picture here is actually in Portland, and it looks like a nice garden. It's kind of odd somebody has some solar panels in their garden like that. But when you realize that this is a rooftop right here, this is somebody's roof in Portland. So it's not somebody's backyard. This is a rooftop. Here's the ladder stairs that go down to ground level. Well, not every house has a flat roof like this, but this particular person, their plan was to load up the roof with some soil and have a garden up there. So that's a priority. That's making good use of an asset they have on their property. This is another house in South Eugene. A lot of people over to do a tour and check out Jessica and Matt's place. This is one of the nicest suburban transformation projects I know in a different neighborhood here in Eugene. This is a great place. And this is my house once again. The south side patio has been turned into a passive solar space. This is a really nice place to be aesthetically. This is just beautiful. And on sunny days, even in the winter, it helps heat my house too. This is a wonderful little cute place a friend of mine built. Sandra lives a few blocks away. This is kind of like part of this little tiny house that she built in her backyard. She is a low budget person, but her priorities were to create this really nice little space. There's a little bedroom that goes along with this. So this could be a place for guests. She doesn't actually live here, but she might at some point. This gives her more options on how she wants to manage her place. Another set of priorities. This is a residential co-op here in Eugene, Duma. It's a big house. It's like 3 stories high. And then there's a basement too. There's 10 people who live here. And when you consider the topic of One Earth lifestyle, you have 10 people living here, and it's a co-op. So they have shared meals, they share purchases. The place has edible landscaping. They've got a tool space. They share their lives here. And so they have a lot of social activity going on here. Probably people spend more time talking with each other than they do looking at television. So this is another priority. People that prioritize, they want to have more social interaction in their lives. And of course, this is a pretty low eco footprint. Well, it's just an aside here, this beautiful permaculture edible landscape here. It's just one of the best places I know. It's called Duma in Eugene. They have a website. You can find out more if you'd like. The flow chart. We're going to upsize a little bit more into um, collaborating, connecting with assets and allies nearby. So, of course, a wonderful asset is permaculture. I think we probably all know something about permaculture is a really good way to organize our thinking for uh, creating systems for taking care of human needs in ways that are friendly to people and planet. You can find out about permaculture online if you need to know some more. Here's a quick little graphic I made. It's assets, actions, and allies. Assets are tools we can use in the community. Allies are people we can work with in the community. And when you have assets and allies, that creates actions. And when you create actions, you create more assets and you create more allies. This is kind of the virtuous circle right here. This is a wonderful little illustration. I think we've probably all seen different versions of that, but that's a really great illustration. Allies and actions in the community. I have another presentation that I did was specifically about assets, allies, and actions. And that presentation is on YouTube. You can link to that from my website as well, or the schedule that I have on this particular presentation. It's got the Zoom information too. But there's all kinds of potentials for making common cause with all kinds of organizations in the community, communities of faith, even goofy city programs like Neighborhood Watch with their kind of goofy sort of logo here. It's a good program. Neighborhood associations. Speaking of, we have neighborhood program here in Eugene, and I'm involved with my neighborhood association. And we've used the neighborhood association to put out information to the neighborhood, and we've had meetings about living more ecologically. So when you're involved with the group, you help set the agenda. So I am very pro neighborhood organization. Communities of faith ought to be big allies for reducing eco footprints. Remember earlier those 5 ideals of the great spiritual traditions. Care for the natural world is one of them. Modesty of lifestyle, service to the community. This garden right here is on a church's property about a mile from where I live right here. And they have a farm stand out in the parking lot. So they're putting that space to good work and adding to local food security as well. So churches should be big allies, mosques, synagogues, all should be big allies for One Earth lifestyles, because they all, their teachings are all about caring for the natural world. And of course, bike tours. We've had lots of bike tours in my neighborhood. A good show and tell to go see places where people are making these changes about living in a more One Earth kind of a way and hear what they're learning. This is a lot of fun having bike tours. This is a property here in my neighborhood. It's a couple blocks away. And this is what it looked like early on. And this is what it looks like now. Big garden. It's a 1 acre property, but it took a lot of work to restore this property because it was all overgrown. And we've turned kind of a blank into a place that has neighborhood events there. We've had learning sessions, workshops to teach about all kinds of One Earth sorts of skills. So this is an unused property in the neighborhood, becomes a real asset for creating One Earth culture. This picture, a lot of neighborhoods have community centers of one sort or another. We have our own neighborhood community center here, and it's a great place. It has meeting space. It has outreach capacity. A lot of recreation centers invite people to teach classes, whether it's guitar playing or tumbling or all kinds of skills people can learn and people can teach. Well, it makes sense to offer classes about living a one earth lifestyle. This would fit really well. And people do that too here at this rec center. I've done some of that myself and other people do too. But a rec center is a huge, big resource a lot of neighborhoods have. We used that rec center for the 2015 Northwest Permaculture Convergence here in Eugene. This is inside the rec center. This was a plenary session. This is one of their classrooms. We had an outdoor expo. So we used the neighborhood rec center to have the largest permaculture event in the Pacific Northwest in 2015. And to my knowledge, it's the only permaculture convergence I've ever heard of that was actually held in a suburban neighborhood. People from out of town camped out in people's backyards. It was a great time. And of course, this is a great example of one earth action right here. This was an unused right-of-way as public property, but the street was never put in. The people in the neighborhood thought this would be a great place to have a neighborhood garden. They went to the city, they had agreements, they had to jump through a few hoops. They did that. And this is a number of years later. This is a wonderful place in the neighborhood where people meet, people can learn about gardening, make friends, build community cohesion at this location right here. Practically any neighborhood is going to have some kind of a place that could attract people for repair the environment or create a neighborhood garden or some kind of positive purpose to bring people together to create community. And this picture here it's a Google image. This is actually my house right here. I wish all of this existed. This doesn't exist. But this does, this part here, and actually a little bit here does. And this is kind of in the making right here. Little bits and pieces in this picture do exist, but only little bits and pieces. But this is just an idea of what a one earth suburban neighborhood might look like right there. I love this picture. So let's increase the scale just a little bit more here. This is a land use approach that the city of Eugene recognizes. It's called block planning. Other cities may have something like this too. Block planning. This is an idealized block the way it is now, and this is what block planning could do. Again, this is only theoretical. This really hasn't happened in Eugene. But edible landscaping, some of the requirements the city has become a lot more flexible when you have a block plan. So without getting into great detail here, we'll look at this in another presentation a little bit more closely. So we're not going to spend much time on this right now. But if a city was actively encouraging people in the community to create a block plan to make better use of the space they have on the block, this would be just an unbelievably powerful, say there's a city staff person and their entire job was to tell people about block planning and help walk them through the process. A block plan doesn't mean that city regulations go away. They don't go away, but they can become much more flexible. And that means you can be a lot more creative in what to do on the block. Another presentation will go into more detail on that. But this location here in Eugene, East Blair Housing Co-op, is not a block plan, but it is a housing co-op, and they own, I think, 7 properties, and they're able to manage those contiguous properties as if it was a block plan. So this used to be a parking lot right here. I've seen when I moved to Eugene, they were taking this out. This was an asphalt parking lot. Now it's a party place. There's a fire pit, there's edible landscaping. But this is just an example of people prioritize what they want to do with where they live. There's enormous potential. And when people prioritize their time and have a big work party to take out the parking lot, well, this is what you can get here. Instead of a parking lot, you can have an awesome party space. So there's a lot of other features at East Blair Housing Co-op. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I want to show you one other. It is a co-op. It's a legal co-op. And one of the features they have, this is their tool room. Instead of everybody there having to have all their own tools, they have a tool room and you can go just check out some tools. If you don't have space for a garden in your townhouse, because some of the people live in townhouses and they don't really have room for a garden, they can have a garden in another part of the co-op's property. So this just illustrates a larger scale of making better use of space when people collaborate and cooperate, and when the ideal is to build community and reduce eco footprints. I could go on and on about East Blair Housing Co-op, and I will at another time. Placemaking is another action. In Portland, there is the city repair. If you don't know city repair in Portland, you can look it up on their website, the City Repair Project. Placemaking is all about creating locations in the neighborhood that cause people to identify and care about where they live. They're most famous for painting intersections in neighborhood streets. This is with the blessing of the city. Of course, there's a great story behind this. You might be able to read that on their website. But creating places in the neighborhood to bring people together. This is a pizza oven. Fire up your pizza oven, which is just out there on the sidewalk, and wow, people start to show up. What a great way to meet people. So placemaking, creating a care for where we live, is a big part of creating a One Earth neighborhood, a One Earth culture. We spend more time caring about and participating in creating more the kind of neighborhood we want to live in. And this, of course, is even a bigger scale, that what if we took parking lots and we redeveloped parking lots into town centers and made them not just town centers, but ecologically compatible town centers as well, with features with the apartments that made them more eco-friendly. There would be, of course, professional services on the lower floor. The whole idea is, this is a mile from where I live. I see Mike right there. Mike, you know where we're talking about. This is just a big parking lot, strip mall, a mile away, that could become a distant downtown. This could be a small local neighborhood downtown right here that could accommodate a lot of people if the apartments were going up 4 or 5 stories and had a nice pedestrian area in here, maybe something a little bit like this. But to turn parking lots into people places that would allow people to take care of their needs closer to where they live, so they don't have to drive so much and they can build culture. And of course, the idealized here would be local businesses here too. This would be small businesses owned by local people as well. Bikes and protected bikeways are the perfect transportation for a One Earth culture. And Eugene, this is a new 2-way bikeway in Eugene. This is just opening right now, and you can see a curb right here to protect the bike riders from traffic. And this place also in Eugene, imagine if you couldn't park along the street and you could move these lanes over so these cars aren't here, and then make this bike lane in both directions, and then have a physical barrier to protect the bikes from cars. A lot more people would ride bikes if they had a safe place to bike. We'll do more about bicycles when we have the presentation about pushing back on cars. So we're going to move into another little realm. This is actually something I haven't talked or thought about very much before, but it's got to be part of the larger piece of a one Earth society, a one Earth economy and culture. And I don't have much detail to say about this, but it's a really important part of the equation. This map here shows depopulating counties in the United States. The red and the pink shows counties where people are leaving right here. And we know that in a large part of the country, large areas, the rural population is diminishing. I mean, there's like ghost towns. I've been in some of these areas here myself, and probably you have too. But I think if we're going to have a successful one Earth society and economy, we're going to have to repopulate rural areas. We're going to have to revitalize rural areas, because there's going to need to be more people in rural areas to grow the food we're going to need, because a sustainable economy is not going to support industrialized agriculture like we have right now. Agriculture is going to have to take more people to grow the food. And of course, when we're looking at this, we also have to anticipate what kind of changes is climate change going to have. Are some of these places even going to be inhabitable in 50 years? So I don't have the answers for really much of any of this, but it's an important topic to have in mind. And I'm sure there are people who have studied this a lot and would have a lot of more information to say about the idea of an environmentally, economically responsible way to repopulate rural areas. And of course, this is what some of those rural areas, this is CSA here in Eugene. Wow, just look at that. But this is not with the big $500,000 combine. This is a different kind of agriculture. So we're not done, but that's most of the presentation. What I want to do now is just kind of, I've already made allusions to some of these other topics, but I want to return to those other topics because they're a large part of the idea of creating a one Earth society, a one Earth economy. And these issues are also upcoming presentations. These are the next presentations. So even larger scale, I think we need to be thinking about, it's great to have your own home, some cool places in the neighborhood to live in, a nice community, but we have to increase the scale enormously. Some words that have fairly recently entered my vocabulary are economic and political democracy. And of course, people have written books about these two words, economic and political democracy. Another presentation, I'll go into more detail about economic and political democracy, but that has to be a big part of our goal, where our economic system and our politics really is democratic. And of course, we don't have that right now. But this is October 22nd, critique of market capitalism. And wow, there's a lot to critique. This, of course, is climate change. This one example here blew my mind when I first saw this graphic. This is the urban footprint of Atlanta, Georgia, right here. This is the urban footprint. This is the urban footprint of Barcelona, Spain, right here. And they're in scale. And even more so, both cities have approximately a similar population. Atlanta's 25 times as big because it's all spread out because of suburbia. And even by European standards, Barcelona is pretty dense, even by European standards. But the economic system likes this because there's more money to be made. And of course, this means lots of cars, lots of suburbia, lots of streets, lots of infrastructure, lots of money being generated here, lots of jobs too. A lot of the jobs to create this are not going to be so common in the sustainable future. And of course, another aspect of market capitalism is social, economic, and political disequity. Here's that 80% again, right here. So the next presentation is going to be a little bit more detailed on market capitalism. And here are a couple pictures from the presentation pushing back against cars. This is Portland, Oregon, of course. These red lines right here, these represent where there was a divided highway along the Willamette River right here. There was a highway right along the river. It was not interstate highway. It actually close to predates the interstate highways. But the road engineer said, oh, you can never take that out. It would create traffic havoc all over the city if you took these out. And they ended up taking them out and it didn't create traffic havoc. Instead, they got a park along the river here. So that's just one example of pushing back on cars. This is a picture from Groningen, Holland. And it's a car-free downtown. If you want to go from here and go have a beer with your friend here, it take a few minutes to ride your bike, but you can't drive a car that way. You got to go way around here if you want to go by car. And a planner in the United States would say, well, why would you want to do that? Because they probably wouldn't understand why you would want to do that, because they just learned about urban places that are built for automobiles. This is on purpose. This is to make cars inconvenient. So you're basically kind of forced to ride a bike or walk. Is this going to work for everybody if you're have to use a wheelchair or you're elderly? I'm not sure how exactly they manage, because of course not everybody rides a bike, but this is the planning. This isn't like some ancient medieval town. This is like new construction. They're building new places in Holland that treat automobiles this way. It's going to take longer to drive than it will to ride a bike. We'll see a lot more interesting examples of pushing back on cars. That's really one of my favorite. And this November 18th, a preview of a preferred future. And of course, we've seen some of these pictures all through this series of presentations, because that's what I have to show and tell are positive images. But we're going to put a lot of them together and go a little bit deeper in some of these examples, like East Blair Housing Co-op, the Greenway in my neighborhood, what we're doing here in the Greenway, positive human potential, micro downtowns, eco villages. So that's going to be November 18th. And of course, the preferred future is substantially moving towards the One Earth lifestyle. Again, is that ever going to happen? I sure hope so. It either will or we're going to wish it had. But I've got a lot of really great pictures of not just Eugene, other places in Oregon, other places in the United States, and then of course some places in Europe as well. And then the final presentation is Upsizing the Movement, a really nice term I came up with. that tells me what the topic is. And I'll briefly explain a new movement that already exists. It's kind of, could you say that again, please? A new movement that already exists. And what I mean by that is when you think of almost all the nonprofits, the social movements, the Occupy, the Black Lives Matter, the women's movement, the environmental movement, social, environmental, economic justice, tons of nonprofits, anywhere from radical to like the Sierra Club. Um, when you just think of all the entities that are doing work to make the community, the environment, a healthier place to live, just think about this topic and understand that almost all of these movements, almost all of these organizations exist to repair some kind of damage created by our economic system. So what that tells me is they're essentially on the same team. All these groups, whether they know it or not, are on the same team. And what I want to describe in this presentation here is what would it be like if these groups recognized all these other organizations and movements were kindred spirits, and we should be making common cause and synchronizing some of our actions, not to have big organization because we don't need a big organization. The actions to take are self-evident. Those actions are moving towards a one earth economy and lifestyle. So I'll go into more detail on this particular topic on December 3rd, but this is something a little bit newer for me. I haven't really thought so much of like this kind of approach to systems change, but of the topic. So that is going to be the final of this 7-part series on December 3rd. And this is actually the last slide right here. Moving towards a one earth lifestyle, economy, and culture. And these are some of the benefits that I thought of. There can be lots more, but resilience, local economy, for positive human potential, sure, good for the environment, mitigate climate change, public health, a positive community culture, empower people, bring out the best. So this is the implications if we get it together and we do what we're capable of doing. All of this and more good stuff can happen. So that is the last picture in the slideshow.